Hello and welcome to The Curator on Monocle Radio with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Over the next 60 minutes, I'll be bringing some of the very best interviews and reports from the past week, including an interview with Mexican chef Santiago Lastra.
Some of the preparations of the dishes at call take weeks, sometimes months.
Plus, we'll recap Monocle's Quality of Life conference in Istanbul with award-winning architect Richard England.
You use concrete, you use wood, and you build a house. That is construction. You touch my heart. That is architecture.
All that and much more in the next hour here on The Curator with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. And as I just said there, we start the show with a recap of Monocle's Quality of Life conference in the beautiful city of Istanbul, where we met award-winning architect, poet and artist Richard England, who imbued his design work with a strong sense of place rooted in local materials and plenty of color.
I can't stop myself growing old, but I struggle desperately to keep myself young and to stop myself growing in terms of not age, but enthusiasm, curiosity. It always reminds me of the words of the author of The Never-Ending Story, Michael Ende, who said, "Man dies when the last part of the child in him becomes an adult." So I struggled to keep young. But, when you get to my age, it's like a little bit of being an old building. You need maintenance. So, and you also get privileges. I mean, I got a chair, which I see the other speakers have had to stand. So there are plus marks. And now about poetry. The pen is, in a way, the tongue of the mind in terms of poetry and prose. In drawing, the pen is, in a way, the eye and the hand. Now, poetry is not that different from architecture. It's about building. You're building with words, and you're choosing a particular lexicon. In architecture, you're building with materials, and you have to choose those materials. But they're both about, one is about sound and silence, and the other is about solid and void. So there is a great similarity. In terms of drawing, I have a great preference for drawing as opposed to taking photographs. In a way, drawing is a meditation.
We've got some architects in the crowd as well, but plenty of people that aren't architects. Is there a benefit to drawing even if you're not a designer?
Look, the sketch gives you something which the computer can never give you, because the sketch can actually take you to places which you haven't even imagined. The hand it's a thinking hand, and what you put down on paper in the concept drawings is about what you are going to build. The actual construction drawings will tell you how to build. So there is a sort of bridge.
So it's almost like it's capturing an atmosphere or an energy.
Well, atmosphere is actually very important. I think one of the most important qualities in terms of an architecture is that the architecture belongs to a place. Man is an evolutionary animal, and we need to be able to create an architecture which somehow or other belongs both to its time but also to its place. I had believed in the early stages in the words of the composer Bela Bartok, who had said, "What is new and significant must of reality be founded on tradition." Tradition teaches you a lot of things. The vernacular architecture of Malta has a wonderful way of maximum utilization of minimal resources, sustainability, relationship to the earth. So these are lessons which we really need to almost relearn So in a way, while we have still so much to actually learn, we may perhaps have even more to remember.
Learning's probably a great jumping off point. If we kind of go back to the start of your career, you worked with Gio Ponti. Incredible, absolutely blows my mind. This mid-century master that we all revere, we talk about all the time. And yet your work feels very different to his. Is that the context piece coming into play?
To go back to the tradition, it was William Blake who said, "We become what we behold." But apart from what you assimilate, you also then need what I would call an intellectual overlay. And I got that intellectual overlay from a number of people. Initially, from an 18-month period as a student architect in the studio of Gio Ponti. And no, his architecture did not actually influence me, his philosophy did. But there were also many others who I consider as mentors. And I was particularly lucky in my 20s. Malta hosted a number of fascinating international personalities like Basil Spence, Victor Passmore, Desmond Morris, Ernie Bradford, Nicholas Montserrat, and I was architect to all of them. So one would have to go and solve the problem of a leaking pool, which would take probably 3/4 of an hour, and then there would be a 2-hour personal masterclass listening to these extraordinary people. And at that age, you assimilate. So I got an overlay, an intellectual overlay, for which I remain eternally grateful.
And let's hear a highlight from the Foreign Desk Explainer. Following attacks by Israeli troops and the discovery of a Hezbollah tunnel close to its base, the UN's peacekeeping mission in Lebanon, UNIFIL, is under scrutiny. Andrew Muller explains why this nearly 50-year-long deployment has failed to reduce tensions between Israel and Lebanon.
Get the UNIFIL forces out of harm's way. It should be done right now, immediately.
The law of military deployments, which holds that it's way harder to get troops out than send them in, applies at least as reliably to peacekeeping operations as to any other kind. The United Nations Department of Peace Operations currently has 11 peacekeeping missions on the go. 4 have been on the ground for more than half a century. UNIFIL has not quite got 50 years on the clock. The United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, to give it its full name, though interim has been doing heavier lifting as the mission has ground on, was established back in 1978. For pretty much the entire period these peacekeepers have been deployed, there hasn't been much peace to keep, and UNIFIL finds itself back in the news after several of its positions were fired upon by Israeli forces, occasioning injuries to 5 peacekeepers. In another incident, Israeli tanks drove through and destroyed the main gate of one UN base.
It's the latest Israeli attack on peacekeepers in the region. On Thursday, 2 UN peacekeepers were injured when an Israeli tank fired on an observation tower in the mission's headquarters.
It is difficult to believe that these incidents were accidental. Anybody with a smartphone can see where the UN's bases in Lebanon are, and the white vehicles, blue helmets and UN flags are also a bit of a giveaway. Shooting up UN positions is of a piece with Israel's current attitude to the UN generally, which has included declaring the Secretary-Actual-General persona non grata and the organisation entire, in recent remarks of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a house of darkness, a swamp of anti-Semitic bile, an anti-Israel flat earth society, and a contemptuous farce.
In this anti-Israel flat earth society, any false charge, any outlandish allegation can muster a majority.
And UNIFIL is, in its present state, as indeed the Israelis have demonstrated, difficult to miss. It is currently 10,000 troops drawn from 48 countries, commanded by Spanish Lieutenant General Aroldo Sáenz. The biggest contingents right now are from Indonesia, Italy, India, Nepal, Ghana and Malaysia, who are each contributing a battalion or so. But what are they actually doing there?
The people of Lebanon, innocent civilians whose country is now a war front.
UNIFIL's original deployment in 1978 was a response to, listeners hypersensitive to leaden irony may wish to look away now, an Israeli invasion of Lebanon undertaken in response to an atrocity perpetrated on Israeli soil by Palestinian terrorists. Specifically, the murder of 38 Israeli civilians, including 13 children, in a bus hijacking near Tel Aviv. Then, as now, southern Lebanon had been appropriated by a militant group as a base for operations against Israel. Not Hezbollah, who were not yet a thing, but the Palestine Liberation Organization. UNIFIL's original mandate consisted of 3 objectives. 1. Confirm withdrawal of Israeli forces from southern Lebanon. 2. Restore international peace and security. 3. Assist the government of Lebanon in ensuring the return of its effective authority in the area. Nearly half a century of UNIFIL presence later, all 3 boxes languish obstinately unticked. Israeli forces returned to southern Lebanon in 1982 and stayed for 18 years. They came back briefly in 2006, and they're there again now. Peace and security of any variety remain in short supply. The government of Lebanon has roughly as much effective authority in the area as it does in, say, Tahiti. UNIFIL does not look any greater a success measured against the criteria of an updated mandate issued after the short Israel-Hezbollah war of 2006. This demanded not only the withdrawal of Israeli forces, but enjoined UNIFIL to, quote, assist the Lebanese armed forces in taking steps towards the establishment between the Blue Line and the Litani River of an area free of any armed personnel, assets and weapons other than those of the government of Lebanon and of UNIFIL. That is, to ensure that Hezbollah removed their missiles and themselves from southern Lebanon. The Blue Line referred to is, more or less, Lebanon's border with Israel. This never happened. Not only did Hezbollah stay obstinately put in southern Lebanon, they acted like they owned the place. Your correspondent, taken on a guided tour of southern Lebanon by Hezbollah circa late 2001, noted the haste with which Lebanese soldiers at checkpoints stepped aside when told who was driving the car. Hezbollah festooned southern Lebanon with rocket-launching positions, letting fly at Israel as political expediency or malevolent whim directed.
If you can see right over here from your right and from your left, you can see a few tunnels.
During Israel's present incursion into Lebanon, IDF troops have shown journalists Hezbollah tunnel entrances a few hundred meters from UNIFIL positions and weapons stashes and firing positions throughout a region that UNIFIL was supposed to be guaranteeing free of such things. Israel's exasperation with UNIFIL is not a recent or entirely unjustified development. As is vexingly often the case with UN deployments, there is a dissonance between the theoretical mission and the practical means of accomplishing it. Disarming Hezbollah and forcing them north was never going to be achieved by polite request or even firm tone. UNIFIL's rules of engagement do contain some woolly chat about how they, quote, may under certain circumstances and conditions resort to the proportionate and gradual use of force to ensure that its area of operations is not utilized for hostile activities. But there is no real world in which anybody would read that as encouragement for the UN to saddle up for guerrilla war against a heavily armed local militia, or for that matter, to shoot back at the IDF. To be clear, it is probably better that UNIFIL have been there than not. UNIFIL have served as a monitoring, mediation and demining service and certainly have not done the local economy any harm over the years. To be even clearer, nobody should be shooting at them. But not for the first time in the history of UN peacekeeping, and to borrow the great BBC correspondent Martin Bell's assessment of a similar endeavour in Bosnia, they have become the military equivalent of a sign saying, please don't throw rocks at this sign. For Monocle Radio, I'm Andrew Muller.
And as I like to do every week, to count down the top songs in different countries of the world. This week I had the pleasure to speak with Emma about the top songs in Kazakhstan.
12:26 here in London. Fernando Augusto Pacheco has just burst into the studio, whacked his big book down, opened it, and if anybody ever meets Fernando, just ask him to show you his notebook. His writing is quite phenomenal. No one can see it.
Every day there's a different pen color as well.
Really?
Yeah, today's kind of red, very simple today.
Why?
Because I have a collection of 24 pens from Pilot, and they have 24 colors. You know? So I think,
what prompts the choice of colour each day?
to be honest, I pick very randomly. So today's a red day.
Today is a red day.
Or an orange day. You're wearing a fabulous orange.
I'm an orange,
yeah.
and we're all russet autumnal, or I don't know, fizzy pop. Right, that's distracted us momentarily from the business in hand, which is the Global Countdown. Always a joy to see you in the studio on a Thursday. Where are you taking us today?
Well, I'm taking us today to Kazakhstan. And you know what, Emma, there's a reason for that. I'm very into Central Asian sounds at the moment.
Okay.
We've done Uzbekistan just a few weeks ago. It's fascinating. There's so much new music there in the region that I need to buy a ticket.
What's a Central Asian? We're going to hear it in a minute, and I'm going to listen for the first time for you. So wherever you are and you're listening, I'm with you listening to what Fernando has chosen for us. It's always a joy and always a surprise. But if you could, without actually playing the music, describe that sound, what would it be?
You know what? It does sound a lot like 80s electro meets kind of a little bit of a folkloric touch. Especially
Amazing.
80s electro meets folklore, okay? That's the description I would give you.
Okay, rolling up our sleeves, rubbing our hands together with glee. Let's dive in at number 5.
Number 5, I would say, is the indie track of the top 5. Her name is Marhaba Sabi. The song is Kiz Bozbala. It's a very nice ballad. Let's have a listen, then I'll tell you a little bit more about her.
Oh yes, we're feeling that.
We're feeling it. And she was discovered on the Kazakh Voice, which is, of course, their own version of their music talent show. But there's an interesting thing about her biographies. Sometimes it's hard to get information about those artists. But it was written that her music is a philosophical view on everything happening in life. Isn't everything?
Isn't
I guess,
absolutely
right?
everything, frankly. Are we going to be introducing that on the playlist? What was it again? A philosophical what?
A philosophical view on everything that is happening in life. So
Great.
it's about everything, basically.
Good. Do we know what she's singing about?
It's all about love. She's very gentle and chic, because she was performing this track at Kazakh Fashion Week for one of the designers. So she was there at the catwalk while the models were walking around her. So there's a fashion component to it as well.
She is, and she's a big fan of the 1980s flat black felt hat that's placed practically at a sort of practically glued vertically to the back of your head. It's a thing.
It's fashion, darling.
It's fashion. Right, okay. That was Marhaba Sabi. She's delicious and divine and lovely. So the little notes I've got next to me, because I've had a look at the videos. If you do listen to this, I plead with you. Go and look at the videos as well, because it makes it twice as fun. I've just got choreo, clapping for this one.
Lots of clapping.
Love choreo.
It's less fashion, but more catchy, I would say. Okay. He is big in Kazakhstan. He's Sadradin, and this song is a delight. Starts very mellow, but then it keeps on growing. The beats keeps on pumping. Jawab Barma. Let's have a listen.
Oh, that's a family event song, isn't it?
I would be happy if I was born in Kazakhstan. Listening to this from a young age, I would love that.
Absolutely.
I love that. And I was describing the music of Kazakhstan. Feel that. There's some pop and electronic elements, but very folkloric. The clapping, we were clapping in studio.
There's scope in this world for a bit more clapping. And there's scope in this world for a bit more everybody getting together in a room and jigging about. There's a bit of choreography here. But the world of dancing has become such a singular and lonely business. Even if you're on a dance floor, ladies and gentlemen, have a clap.
and enjoy life.
Yes.
Like Sadruddin. He's
What's
not
he singing about?
He's not robotic at all. Well, you asked me that. There's only one line I actually translated. He says, I wrote your name in my heart.
Oh,
It's all about that.
they're a sweet little bunch out in Kazakhstan, aren't they?
Yes.
We've got Mahaba Sabi, who's doing her philosophical view.
Philosophical view on life.
It's great. We've got Sadruddin with his choreography and his clapping and his, what was his name? All About Love?
It's all about love, writing the name in the heart. I don't know how can you do that.
It's just, I don't know. Hopefully not physically. That might be a bit unpleasant. Right, my next one. They like a jacket, do these bands, don't they?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
I mean, and she is fabulous. She's actually from Uzbekistan. She's a diva. This song by itself has 300 million views already. I'll tell you more about it, but she's absolutely fabulous. It's Ozoda from Uzbekistan with Kok Juguli. Let's have a listen. Emma, honestly, I have to translate it to you.
Please.
It's Blue
No, don't.
Jay.
It's what?
Blue Jay? I think Jay is a bird.
Right.
I think.
But we know it as, what's the name again?
Kok Jiguli.
Kok Jiggly. Right.
What a track. She is fabulous. She's fabulous. She's 50 years old. She's like that diva from Uzbekistan. And I have to tell you something about Uzbekistan. That's the music mecca in the region. I've done it a few weeks ago. I'm fascinated by the country. And apparently in the 80s, they used to have a great music scene as well. So Ozoda, she is the queen.
Will you promise me you'll put that on the playlist? Just as a bit of a wild card. Because whatever you're doing, it's another of those stopping you on your tracks, apart from the fact that it's not necessarily for all the right reasons. Put it this way, she raises a smile, or those lyrics certainly raise a smile.
Absolutely.
If you've got the mentality of a 10-year-old. Okay, thank
and
you
she's
for that.
incredibly popular as well.
She is, and she's just about to get even more so. Right, that was Ozoda and the unmentionable name. Number 2.
Let's listen to some Kazakh rap.
This is baths now in the videos, and lots of men with no clothes on.
Yes.
But it's quite sort of rural and macho.
And jokey as well. Because
Jokey, rural, macho baths.
you have a very handsome man on a horse,
Yes.
and he's, half naked.
Yes.
And he's pretending he's selling the advertising for a shampoo or a soap bar. I couldn't quite understand. But they're having fun. I think this is a kind of a fun rap group. Let's have a listen to Irina Karaturna with Fear.
Чудо света это море по колено это легенда дискотека.
It has vibes of a kind of like Kazakh Macklemore.
Yes. It's a good song to listen when you're riding a horse or something.
Yes.
It's...
Do you know, I often wonder what to do when I'm riding a horse, and I think you might just have solved my problems.
But don't worry, Emma, they're having fun. This is a jokey group. They've become big on social media, and now it's a mixture of comedy and music, really.
It's brilliant. For all the wrong reasons. I'm absolutely charmed by Kazakhstan because we have love and we have tenderness and we have carving names on people's hearts. It's just a little gruesome. Then we have a really rude named song, and then we have macho men on horses and in baths. What more could what more could anybody ask from a nation's musical offerings apart from number 1?
Which is a return of Sadruddin, but that's his newer song.
Now, he was a choreography and clapping guy.
Yes.
Okay.
This is less clapping, a little bit more melodrama.
Seni seviyorum, seni özlüyorum. Çok 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 çok. Çiki 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 seni seviyorum, seni özlüyorum. Yok yok yok.
So there I am.
Cheeky.
Cheeky, cheeky, cheeky. We love a bit of cheeky, cheeky, cheeky. It just reminds me of eating somewhere that's really harshly lit with plastic tables about 11 o'clock at night, something wrapped in something flatbread and delicious. You're not entirely sure where you are, but the music is
Cheeky, cheeky.
cheeky, cheeky. What's that about then, apart from Emma's late night snacks?
Again, he says, I love you like Adam, even if you ate the apple from paradise. I believe he was talking about Adam and Eve, right?
Okay, I love you like Adam, even if you eat the apple.
From paradise, because
Right.
Eve eats the apple in paradise, right? I have to catch up with my Bible lessons,
Yes.
but
Yes.
something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and Google Translate has so much to answer for.
I love your face. Why you-
Well, I'm just baffled by that, because I thought it was going to be, well, not that, frankly. What's your favourite today? I mean, we've got, you've got that one shot at pushing the Kazakh culture into the playlist. What will we be introducing on the Monocle playlist soon enough?
I am going to say that Marhaba, the song at number 5, Kiz Bozbala, it's a cool song. I think it definitely fits the playlist.
Okay.
UBS has over 900 investment analysts from over 100 different countries.
Over 900 of the sharpest minds and freshest thinkers in the world of finance today.
To find out how we could help you,
contact us at ubs.com.
You are listening to The Curator, a weekly highlight show here on Monocle Radio. Let's head back to Istanbul now. Nanushka has gone from being a household name in its native Hungary to a brand that's aiming to become a global luxury fashion conglomerate. We meet the duo driving its growth, Sandra Sandor and Peter Baldasti.
I grew up surrounded by clothes because my mom set up a small children's wear business in the early 70s in Hungary, back then in communist Hungary. At a very early age, I decided that I want to work in fashion. So then I went to London to study fashion design, and then right after college, I designed my first collection because I decided that I do not want to work at a larger fashion house, but I really wanted to create my own label. I went back to Budapest. That's when Nanushka was born, like almost 20 years ago now.
It's so interesting that you say you went back to Budapest, especially back then when I think anyone within the fashion industry would have probably laughed if they said, you're not in Milan, you're not in Paris, there's no way you will be able to set this up and then also grow an international presence. What have been the benefits of having Budapest as your base and then building from there?
What it means to be based out of Budapest as a creative entrepreneur. Budapest is very well connected in the sense that it's pretty close to the Western capitals and Western Europe, also culturally, but also like logistically. It's easy to access all kind of the Western markets. But at the same time, it gives you a different pace of life, so to say. And of course, in terms of fashion talent, a city like Budapest didn't have a lot when we started out. I joined her in 2016, and we had to learn everything through experience, through trial and error. Well, mostly error, but that was certainly an experience. But it's been an incredible ride ever since, and we now have a strong team also based out of Budapest, but also based in London, a pretty international management team and pretty international team. We also managed to educate and grow and nurture a pretty big pool of local talent. There was not really any other fashion company in Hungary before, so we were the first one. I hope that it will also lay the foundation of future creative enterprises and creative ventures in Hungary.
And there's also the proximity to great manufacturing. Is that something that you want to emphasize, the Made in Hungary label and the producers within Hungary that you work with?
The fact that a lot of luxury houses have been manufacturing in Hungary and around Hungary for a long period of time helped us to scale the business at the early days. And on the other hand, further down the road, we were growing very, very fast, and we had some issues in scaling up the supply chain and production part, because Hungary is, of course, not the size of a country like Turkey, for instance, where you have huge production conglomerates. Hungary is much smaller, but at the same time, it has very high quality manufacturing. So it was good to rely on.
Regarding manufacturing, maybe I just give a little bit about like my design approach, so then I could talk about how I choose handicraft techniques, which we use in Hungary. I'm really into mixing distant cultural references. Actually, Budapest was always like an intersection of East and West. The Ottoman influence as well, through the Habsburg, and the Soviet era had some influence. And I'm just really interested in like mixing or merging innovative design with like traditional craftsmanship. We gathered a group of women in like the rural Hungarian countryside. They were always like teaching them a new skill, whatever, like whether it's like ceramic buttons or like hand crochet bags. And now they are making like tableware for our cafes. They are all these like this element of human touch they are giving to our garments and products.
Which is very rare, especially when you're working within the contemporary market and you're offering very competitive luxury price points. The fashion market is becoming very saturated and as a result also in many cases very homogeneous, right? And what it seems that you are doing is breaking the rules in very different ways, whether it is your investment in craft, the way that you're approaching retail as well. Maybe we can start with your retail shops, because as a young business, right now most brands are doubling down on digital, and you've opened very beautifully designed shops, first in Budapest, then London, across the US. Tell us why that has been important for the business.
Fasten designed our London and New York stores, and they are hospitality designers. And one of the reasons why we as a fashion brand went to a hospitality design studio and architecture practice was actually the exact reason of how we can transform an otherwise boring, a little bit alienating retail experience into something much more hospitable, something much more memorable, and something that we also would like to experience ourselves. So using hospitality design aspects and then approach like F&B or hospitality approach was really crucial for us when we designed our retail stores. We have cafes in the store. Now we are working on opening our London mini hotel, which is a hotel with one room. It's not really a hotel, London apartment above the store that all our customers will be accessible to the public. We are constantly thinking about what kind of human elements and hospitality elements you can bring into a retail experience that can differentiate yourself. Because the issue that you mentioned now is that the whole fashion industry is becoming so homogeneous, and new product ideas, innovations can be copied in weeks. It's absolutely crazy. If you want to differentiate your brand beyond the actual products, you have to be thinking about the experiences, because that's one way that this is something that's much more difficult to copy or to actually, replicate.
And for food neighborhoods, this week we're heading upstream to Hudson, a leafy town north of New York, to sample its culinary delights. Monocle's Anita Riota takes us on a tour.
I'm afraid to say we're quite the stereotype up here. As New Yorkers, my brother and I, born and raised, and my parents living in the city since the 80s, we are not alone in having cast our eye northwards to the Hudson Valley in recent years. When the pandemic meant my brother couldn't escape the sirens in Brooklyn, and my parents were shuttered in their apartment in Manhattan, the space and serenity of the Hudson Valley seemed almost a mirage. If, like us, you're commuting from the city, you'll get off the train at Hudson Station, housed in the same small red brick building since 1874. If you're British, that may not impress you, but that's pretty old round our parts. If you're staying for the weekend, there are few things Hudson does better than intimate lodgings. Family-run WM Farmer & Sons practically begs you to cozy up with stripped-back wooden tables, candlelit rooms, and mouth-watering smells emanating from the restaurant. I always go for the steak that arrives sizzling and with that perfect char, and I cajole my family into sharing some of their more indulgent sides. Tender greens with drunken shallots, marble potatoes glistening in amarillo butter, or a bubbling skillet of mac and cheese. When you head out and turn on to Warren Street, you'll have the heart of Hudson Town laid out before you. Known for its vast collection of furniture stores, you'll have to be diligent not to get too distracted by Chinese vanities and mid-century sofas calling from the windows. Our next gastronomic stop is the new opening Via Cassia. Italian-American chef Gaetano Arnone and his wife Megan are also New York City transplants. The biggest compliment I can ever pay an Italian restaurant is that my Sicilian parents liked it. And my parents loved Via Cassia. The pasta on offer is freshly made every day. The bucatini amatriciana have the perfect true, lingering kick from the chili flakes and crispy guanciale. The insalata Via Cassia mixes multiple types of radicchio, toasted almonds, and Parmigiano Reggiano, and lasted just about 2 minutes on our table. Chef Gaetano has innovated the classic staple spaghetti aglio and peperoncino. He shared the secret amongst us Italians, but I'm not sure I'm allowed to divulge. I can say it's unmissable. Be ready for some spice. Further up Warren Street, you'll find Feast and Floret, which was our first love in Hudson. The apple and radicchio salad with gorgonzola and walnuts is my brother's favorite, and no, he will not give you a bite. I tend towards the crunchy, zesty fennel salad, typically served with orange slices and Castelvetrano olives. But if you go now, you'll try the version with plums. You'll have to tell me how it is. The pork ribs slathered in Amaro agrodolce fall off the bone, and the sorprese with squid ink and induja is a bite that feels entirely different than anything you've had before. But Feast and Floret truly delivers on the name. Once you've feasted, stop by the flower cart where you can grab a bouquet of locally sourced fresh and dried flowers. If that's not enough, pick up a pot of specialty salts, ranging from oyster mushroom to tuna or citrus. My fennel pollen salt traveled all the way back to London with me and enjoys frequent use in my kitchen. Grab a drink to take a break from all this food at the Maker Hotel. Another boutique hotel in town, the Maker is delightfully decadent but cozy, with touches of Belle Epoque and Art Deco designs. You may find yourself nestled into a grandiose leather armchair by a twin fireplace, sipping an old-fashioned or penicillin. If you have one too many, you can always grab a room upstairs. But this old whaling town can also offer more casual fare. A few more antique furniture shops past the Maker, Back Bar offers Southeast Asian bites ranging from crispy crab rangoons to heartier smoked pork belly bao buns in a classic bar setting with leather-topped high stools and colorful, almost papier-mâché hanging lanterns. Pair those with a delicious miso soba salad and a refreshing Vietnamese cucumber salad and maybe a frozen margarita, and you've created the perfect afternoon pit stop. If it's a nice day, be sure to snag a table in the sprawling gravel garden before they're all gone. Cap your night off at the neon-hued, raucous, and joyous Lil Deb's Oasis for some spirited pan-Latin food. Plantains, empanadas, and tamales abound here. Or go big and get the steaming whole fried fish. It's worth it. Wash us all down with outrageous cocktails like the Filthy Martini, the Garden Orgy, or the Forest Nymph. While Lil Deb's Oasis may not take itself too seriously in decor or cocktail names, it certainly does in mission. Proceeds of your meal will go to support Native American cultural affairs funds, along with racial justice and mutual aid organizations. Hudson has known it's a gem for years. Now it's time for the rest of us to catch up.
This week we're also in Paris for the Paris Auto Show, and of course we were joined by Simon Bouvier, Monocle's Paris Bureau Chief.
It opened on Monday, where we had a very busy press day. That's when I went, and then to the public on Tuesday. And obviously the stars of the show are the big French manufacturers, including Renault Group and Stellantis, the Franco-Italian German-American giant. And the big question was, how are the Chinese car makers going to react to all of the tariffs that the European Union has been putting on electric cars manufactured in China? And the answer is they were there. A lot of them, including BYD, one of the biggest ones, had impressive stands at the auto show. So they're here to stay.
What did the French automotive world say about the EU tariffs imposed last week? I know that the German automotive world were not happy at all.
Yes, well, I think it's a mixed bag because there are manufacturers like the Renault Group who say that, the ambitious objectives or regulations really of the EU that say that no vehicle that emits emissions can be sold in the European Union starting in 2035. They say that's too soon and there's no time for them to transition. And there are others like Stellantis who are saying, well, if we can't beat them, then let's join them, and who are creating partnerships with Chinese car makers so that they can exchange technologies and kind of get into that magic less than 20,000 euros segment for a new electric car, which is what everybody is striving to get to.
And it is something that arguably the French would be quite well positioned to do, given the fact that historically the cars that they make fit very neatly into that category. They don't make the super luxe cars like the likes of BMW. So where does the French automotive industry stand at the moment? I mean, I mentioned a moment ago that the repackaged Renault 5 is that their tactic?
It is, but I think, to borrow, as I was telling Chris Chermak the other day, to borrow an expression from a colleague of ours at the French business daily Les Echos, if real estate is mantra is location, 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 then for the electric car game, the mantra is pricing, pricing, pricing. Right now, there's been a kind of well-publicized slump in electric car sales because all the early adopters who are very into electric car technology are already driving one, and the rest are holding off on adopting electric because they're waiting for more affordable options. So the French are well positioned because historically they have made these mass market models, but the electric technology, making it cheaply enough to get into that magic number that I mentioned, the 20,000 euro segment, is not quite there yet. So that's the problem. And the Chinese product from Chinese manufacturers is very good. Embattled Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares even said that he thought that the technology was equal, if not better, but 30% cheaper in Chinese electric cars.
And do we believe that the repackaged Renault 5, and indeed I think the Renault 4 is coming back as well in electric form?
That's right.
Do you think that will convince people? I mean, when you see the car, does it give you that warmth of recognition and therefore that trust that you give to a car that is something that you want to buy?
Yeah, I think we shouldn't underestimate the power of design and of branding. And that's where the European car makers in general, including the French ones, have the advantage when it comes to convincing their home consumers. We saw that Fiat, about 20 years ago now, revived the Fiat 500. It was a huge hit. I think it's a tried and true tactic, and they're more attuned to the tastes of the consumers in their home markets from a kind of design and aesthetic standpoint. So it's definitely, they're hoping that it's going to be a big boost, but then they're going to have to bring costs down as well. And that's going to be the kind of magic formula that will allow them to survive in this new era of Chinese competition.
And then we have to have the big infrastructure debate, don't we? Because, I mean, if you walk around the streets of Paris, you don't see many plug-in points. And if you step out of Paris, one wonders, a country which has an incredibly good train network may also, absolutely needs to be able to step up in terms of its provision for the new generation of electric cars. Where are we?
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the top concerns for consumers who haven't adopted electric cars yet is, this range anxiety, as they call it. Am I going to run out of juice halfway to my destination? But I do think that objectively on the ground, the situation has changed a lot from where it was at even a few years ago. I think in France, in most, if not all petrol stations, you have charging stations. The infrastructure in Europe lagged behind what it was in the US, for instance, until very recently. But now we've caught up. So I think the infrastructure side of things is not as big of a inhibiting factor objectively, but I think there's still work to do to convince consumers that it's okay. They're not going to get stranded just because they picked this technology over the good old-fashioned internal combustion engine.
And finally, here on The Curator, more food and drink. This time we sit down with Mexican chef Santiago Lastre to hear about his new opening, Fonda, which takes inspiration from his home country's down-to-earth eateries.
For me, it's about something that is bigger than just a restaurant. Like, I moved here to London because I wanted to share the meaning of quality of Mexican culture, Mexican food, not only in the UK, but like in the world. Like, that's like my dream. I'm a bit of an ambassador of Mexico, and I just put myself that quest. And if you have only one restaurant, it's just certain amount of people that can try it. Col is more a fine dining restaurant where it's more of a special occasion. So you go there when we have regulars that they come like every season. So they will come like 3 times a year, 4 times a year. We have other regulars. There's one guy called Robin, like he's been in the restaurant for 36 times.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's amazing. But it's nothing, we don't have like people that comes like every week or every day, you know? So there's always been in my mind this thought of what it will happen if we have a place where people can go every day. Or when people don't have to book in advance for so long, that we could just show up and have some great food, a la carte, Mexican, and potentially to get to more people. So that's why we're opening the second restaurant. It's not that I'm like addicted to opening restaurants or anything. It's more like, how can we get into more people, and how can we make somewhere where you can just go a little bit more accessible than Col, you know?
Well, and it is called Fonda. And I would like to ask you to explain to us what a fonda really is and what it means in Mexican culture and for you personally.
Fonda is like a Mexican eatery. It's like some sort of trattoria or bistro. It has a cultural connotation of you pick your fonda. I mean, fonda started when Mexico was a Spanish colony. There were these like hostels. So really fancy hostels, actually, where people will come from Spain and they will stay there in the New Spain, that was the name of Mexico. And they will have accommodation and they will have some food. And the food there in the fondas, it was really interesting because it was a mixture of what Spanish will normally eat and some sort of Mexican heritage ingredients or a few twists. And then from there, it's been evolving to, it's not a hostel anymore, it's more a restaurant. And it's a family-owned business normally, where people will have their houses normally opening their garage door and set a comal, that is these flat tops where we do tortillas in Mexico, a few tables, and people will cook in their kitchen, like in their home kitchen, and then bring like Tupperware with the fillings, and they would just cook for people that are workers in offices or students, you know. And then the interesting thing is that when you're, let's say, in university or you just have your job in the office, you pick your fonda. So you will not, like in Mexico, is not the same as in other countries where you be like, oh, what should I have today? Should we have some Chinese or should we have some Japanese or should we have some Italian food? You every day go to the same place and have the same food, and you pick the place that you go and you just keep going. And that is the fonda.
But there is a real sense of home comfort there. And I guess I wonder, how is that going to work in a context like Mayfair in London? You know, obviously you run Col as a very accomplished kind of fine dining version of Mexican food. How are you going to maintain a bit of that kind of naughtiness and edge of the home style environment into this completely different setting?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where fonda has the meaning of this place that you go every day, but obviously it's our take on it. It's not a house with plastic chairs. It's more of a...
It would be different from Mayfair.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's more about, we want to champion Mexican contemporary design as well. So the place we want it to be like around the area. There's a lot of really cool art galleries, and the idea of Fonda as well is to be able to be some sort of hub or exhibition for Mexican contemporary art and design, and make people feel that they are in another world. And then also the food, it's our take on as well. Not only of the food that you normally will have in the fondas, you have a little bit of that, but also it's just whatever I really like about Mexican regional cuisine. As I like to see it is the food that I will cook at home. If I will make you like some sort of Mexican feast to my friends, and you will have the access of the ingredients that the best, the highest quality ingredients from the UK, but cooking it in a home way instead of having to, like some of the preparations of the dishes that take weeks, sometimes months. So you have to like put these plums in, cook them at 60 degrees for 3 months, and then pass it, and then you make like this, you semi-dehydrate, and then you make a paste with that. You know, there is more like, we have this amazing lobster, we marinate it with achiote, and then we make some sort of quesadilla that is called gringa, and we have it inside, put it in the comal, and serve it with salsa. You know, like, it's really great ingredients, curated, but in a more approachable way. Like, before creating the dishes at Fonda, I have to ask myself, will you do it at home? But it's still a home of a chef that is really different. Well, it's not really different, but it's a little bit different than the home of someone that haven't spent, like, I don't know, 17 years cooking, you know?
And that's all we've got time for this week's edition of The Curator. The show was produced by David Stevens and presented by me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Join us again next week, and thank you for listening.